All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Fatboyz Fantasy Podcast presented by the Fantasy Holics. So today we're going to break down our top 12 quarterbacks, Dynasty ranking quarterbacks. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. Me and Bo had a bunch of stuff thrown at us this week, but we wanted to get something out to you guys. So we're going to start breaking down some of our rankings. This week we're going to knock out top 12 quarterbacks, and then we're going to move on to the running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. We don't really break down defenses or kickers too much. We'll add those in eventually with one of the other ones. Right now we're in the middle of a super flex dynasty draft with the Fantasy Holics. So as soon as that draft concludes, now it's a slow draft. I think we're in round 17, right, Bo?
That's correct.
Yeah, we're in round 17 out of 27. As soon as that draft concludes, that following Tuesday, we are going to pump out the results of that draft. We're going to break down that draft. We're going to break down a couple teams. We're going to talk about some of those guys. We're going to talk about some of the guys that we love as deep sleepers. Since we're going 27 rounds. You're talking some deep dives that you got to look for in the 20 through 27th round.
Backup punters at that point, yes.
Yeah, backup punters. Oh boy, the punt god there in Buffalo.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's jump straight into. Once again, guys, we are remote, so bear with us a little bit here. Hopefully, we don't lose Bo this week. Let's jump into these quarterbacks. Let's start with our honorable mention. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up.
Okay.
I think our honorable mentions were both about the same. I have Derek Carr there at my 12 to 13 range there as my honorable mention.
Yeah. Derek Carr is a guy that I have actually ranked in my top 12, Brant, and I'm not trying to steal your spotlight here, so if you have more to say about Derek Carr, please do. But Derek Carr is definitely a guy that I'm very, very on board with.
Absolutely. Derek Carr, I'm going to throw it out. He just got Devontae Adams. He still has Jacobs there. He has Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, and they added a heck of a pass-catching running back in Zamir White coming in there also. So, he's got all the weapons there to move into the top 12 of my rankings. I guess you said you had him there. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I do remember discussing this. He has all the weapons there to move in. This guy is a guy that he's going to be on the edge of QB1 for a few more years. Let's check his age real fast. He's still down there in age. He's 31, so I guess he's a little bit up there. But for a quarterback, is 31 really old?
No, not really. No.
So Derek Carr is just one of those guys that he's going to be on the brink he's just going to be on the brink of my 12 ranking. Who do you have there at your honorable mention?
Yeah, my honorable mention's very similar. Quite a bit younger. My honorable mention's 24, but his offense, his pass catching, his pass catchers, took a big upgrade this offseason due to another wide receiver trade. I have Tua Tagovailoa as my honorable mention. 24 years old, getting ready to go into his third season. This is a guy that prior to his hip injury in college was the consensus number one quarterback. Obviously, Joe Burrow came on, made history, and then, for lack of better terms, the rest is history. But you remember, before Tua got that injury, it was tank for Tua. All the NFL teams wanted Tua. Left-handed quarterback, big arm back then, mobile, very high IQ. He was very well sought after, and he got Tyreek Hill this year, and he also had Jalen Waddle, who really, really bust onto the scene last year. Mike Gesicki, who's a very serviceable tight end, just added a great pass-catching back this offseason, and oh, my Lord, Chase Edmonds,
Yep.
I'm sorry. And that should help. The reason I don't put Tua in the top 12, Brant, Tua's rookie year, how high I was on him in a dynasty startup. My first ever dynasty league I did, I took Tua in the 11th round of a dynasty startup as my number one quarterback, and it really led me into some struggles because the rest of my roster was pretty good. I've since solidified my quarterback position with another name that we'll talk about here in a little while, but I rode that Tua train, and it was not friendly at times. But I think this is Tua's make or break year. If Tua's going to be anything, it's going to happen this season. And just because we haven't seen it yet, and because the Dolphins' social media team is pretty unfair to Tua as well, putting out that rocket of a pass he threw to Tyreek the other day, and it got smeared all over social media. So it just wouldn't be appropriate for me to have Tua in my top 12.
Right. They since added a few more videos out there of him completing a lot better passes to those guys. I actually have Tua as my number 12 quarterback, so I have him just a little inch above Derek Carr. So, I mean, right there, we're pretty much the same. Like you said, you got Tua as your honorable mention. You got Carr as your 12. I have Tua as my 12, and Carr as my honorable mention. We're not far off by any means.
Sure.
I want to bring up just a couple names that we're not going to go over, and some people may scratch their heads at. I'm just going to bring those up right now.
Why don't you save the ones that are on the brink for afterwards?
Okay.
That way people that way we can give our top 12, and then we can go back and justify why we left some of those guys off.
Okay, absolutely. You want to go ahead and hit us with your 11?
Oh, well, my number 12. You said your number 12 was Tua. My number 12 is Russell Wilson, and I know Brant. That's a quarterback near and dear to your heart as a diehard Seattle fan. I know you said you were ready for him to leave town.
Yep.
But it definitely has put your team into a rebuild, and it puts Denver into immediate contention. I think Russ could be higher on the list, but I genuinely think he took a slight downgrade in his pass catchers this offseason. Cortland Sutton's been one that's, really highly touted. He had that injury, burst onto the scene his rookie year, then had an injury, missed a whole season, or played 7% of the snaps week one and then missed the rest of the season. Jerry Jeudy is a guy that, again, very highly touted coming out of Alabama, who's had flashes but never really gotten to prove himself. And then Noah Fant actually left Denver, coming back to you guys in Seattle in that trade. So for me, I think I move Russ down just a little bit because one, he's not getting any younger, which we all know, and in a dynasty startup quarterback rankings, even though I think Russ is a guy that he's going to have 4 or 5 good years left. It's one of those things that this is a position, if you can get one of the younger guys that's at the top of their game and not have to worry about your quarterback spot for the next 7-8 years, it's a pretty good blessing. And for those reasons, I've got Russ at 12.
Okay. I have Russ at 9. I'll go ahead and just hit this real fast. I have Russ at 9 because he's playing. He's probably playing behind the best offensive line he ever has played behind. So this is a chance that we're finally going to get to see Russell Wilson have time in the pocket. He got an upgrade in pass-catching running backs with Williams and Melvin Gordon. He also has a guy named Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler. Those two guys right there could really play a Tyler Lockett-type role with the deep ball. We all know that Russell has one of the most beautiful deep balls in NFL right now. As you said, he is up there in age. That's why I have him at that 9-10 range right there. He's 33 years old, so he is up there in age. He's got 10 years. I think really, I don't want to say he took an upgrade or a downgrade, but his wide receiver 2, I think, took an upgrade with Jeudy because Lockett was getting up there in age, and Lockett was, but with that connection he had with Lockett is a thing that he's got to earn with somebody else. But I still like Russell as a good, probably, what'd you say, 3-4 year bridge quarterback.
Sure.
And I trust Russell a little bit more to be a bridge quarterback than I do some of these other names that I have at 10, 11, and 12. Well, 12 I have Tua, because Tua's in a make or break year, as you said. And then like I said, Russell Wilson, we know what he can bring to the table. He's brought top 10 quarterback finishes in multiple years. So I mean, he's just a guy that I feel like he's safe. That's why I just have him right there at that 9 spot. I just feel like he's a good, safe guy.
Can we both agree real quick though that if you and I strapped on the shoulder pads and helmets, we'd probably be an improvement from his past offensive line?
Yeah. Unfortunately,
Okay.
Unfortunately, even as a Seahawks fan, I unfortunately have to agree with you because there wasn't much there.
So I have Russ at 12. You have him at 9. You had Derek Carr as your honorable mention. He is my number 11. So who is your number 11?
My number 11 is Trey Lance, and really, honestly, the only reason I have Trey Lance this low is we haven't seen a whole lot of him. We saw him play, a few snaps here and there, fill in. The week he did play, he played 100% of the snaps at week 5 at Arizona, where he went 15 of 29 for 192 and a touchdown. And he had, 16 rushes for 89 yards, no touchdowns there. And then he played 100% of the snaps there in Houston. So, I mean, the 2 times he did play, he did ball out. He did amazingly. But there's still that guy that's knocking, hanging around because, A, he just had surgery. Nobody really wants to trade for a guy right now, and Jimmy Garoppolo. So I understand that the Niners are committed to him. So I just have Trey Lance right there just because if he does stutter a little bit, you may see him take a backseat a little bit again to Jimmy G if he's still there. So there's just so many question marks in my mind. And let's be honest, outside of Kittle, he has a gadget guy in Deebo Samuel, and he has a very flaky wide receiver in Brandon Ayuk, who's some weeks there, some week he's not. So, I mean, he doesn't have a whole lot of weapons there in San Francisco. So he's just kind of right there. He's a great option to start with his young age, and he's just unproven to me. That's just kind of where I have him at. He's 22 years old, so I mean, like I said, his age is there. It's just he's one of those guys I want to see it more than 2 weeks in a 17-week season.
Okay, all right. Who do you have at 10, Brant?
At 10, I have Trevor Lawrence. And once again, Lawrence is not by any means, he's not going anywhere. He's 22 years old also. He had a phenomenal year. Where did he end up? He ended up as QB 23. He started coming into his own at the end of the year, really. He struggled out of the gates a little bit, but then you look at his last, week 15 on, week 16 on, he had, I guess he really didn't hang up a whole lot of points.
Yeah, he really had a bad year all over.
Yeah, he did. I thought he had better games, but I guess they were spaced out a little further than what I thought. I own 0 stock in him, and so he came out on fire. But he's getting a chance. And once again, one of the main reasons I have him below or have him at 10 is he's getting once again a whole new offense in his second year, and they did upgrade his wide receivers, so that's a plus for him. But it's just one of those things that he's getting a whole new offense. Let's see how you do in that offense. I think Trevor Lawrence is a safe guy to start your dynasty with. I don't think he's one of those guys that's going to ball out and win you games by any means yet, but he does have that potential there. That's why I would have 0 problem. He's one of those guys that I see as a very consistent quarterback. He's going to hang you 15 to 18 points guaranteed almost every week, but he still may have those ball out weeks at 30 plus points or anything else, but Jacksonville is slowly improved their defense. They improved his weapons. So Lawrence is one of those guys I just feel he's safe, but he's nothing out of the ordinary that's going to win me a few games like some of the top 5 names that we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, so I actually also have Trevor Lawrence at my quarterback 10, and for a lot of the reasons you mentioned, but also there's for more. Really, Trevor Lawrence is a guy to me that I don't think it will happen this year and maybe not even next year, but I think 3 years from now you're going to be talking about Trevor Lawrence with the top 5 quarterbacks in the National Football League. Okay, and my rationale and reason behind that is really simple. Year 1 in the NFL, you almost have to crumple that piece of paper up, crumple all his stats up, throw them out. Okay, we had Urban Meyer as the offensive coordinator who that was a dumpster fire in its own right, okay? And last year, Trevor Lawrence is what would have been his probably best weapon, didn't play in Travis Etienne.
Yeah.
And I think getting Travis Etienne back becomes super valuable to Trevor Lawrence. And the reason I say it's going to take him a couple years is, yes, I know they went and spent some big money on the wide receiving core this year, but they really kind of, unless there's something in Christian Kirk that I haven't seen, they kind of mismanaged who they spent that money on. The Jacksonville Jaguars had the draft capital and the financial means to make a run at, Tyreek Hill or, somebody like that would have immediately put Trevor Lawrence inside the top 10 for me. And you look back to Trevor Lawrence in college, this guy was the closest thing to a can't miss prospect as we'd seen since Andrew Luck. And he was the real deal, complete package in college. He could run the ball pretty well, when he needed to. He definitely had pinpoint accuracy. He could hit every throw. that any kind of NFL quarterback would ever need. And I think this is a situation where, Trevor Lawrence didn't lose. There was some crazy number out there, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but he lost more games last year in Jacksonville than he'd ever lost in his football playing career, period. Which they lost a lot of games in Jacksonville, so that's not hard to imagine with a guy like Trevor Lawrence. But I think the future is extremely bright for Trevor Lawrence, and I still think when those guys from last year's quarterback class all hang it up, he will still be the most highly touted out of all of them.
Okay. And one thing you said to Christian Kirk, I think they well overspent for Christian Kirk. I 100% agree with you. But let's look at some of the names he had as his slot wideouts in college. That Hunter Renfrow, Amari Rodgers both broke out onto the scene as great slot receivers in college. He loves his slot wideouts, and I really
Justin
feel
Ross as well.
Who?
Justin Ross
yes.
as well.
Yes. And Christian Kirk had one of his best years last year playing the slot for Kyler Murray. And I really think that's where their mindset was with adding Christian Kirk. I understand you normally want to pay your top wideout, your outside guys, those money. But I like I said, I think they spent the money in the wrong area. But I think Christian Kirk is going to be a sneaky ad for a lot of fantasy relevancy and to help him out a lot. I'm actually anxious to look at that. I've invested in Christian Kirk actually in the league we're in drafting right now. I invested in Christian Kirk. I actually am really excited to see how he goes with Trevor Lawrence this year. I just wanted to throw that out that I've done a little looking into why they spent that money, and I think that's where their head was with it. I hope that's where it is.
Okay.
So
at number 9, I actually have a guy that you already talked about, and that's Trey Lance. And the reason that I have Trey Lance above Trevor Lawrence is because when we talk about fantasy quarterbacks, let me talk about a guy that you and I both have a lot higher, that when it comes to the quarterback position overall is just a complete eyesore for both of us, but puts up the fantasy numbers every week, and that's Lamar Jackson. And what does Lamar Jackson do really, 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 really well? He runs the ball. Trey Lance is extremely mobile. He can run really well. This is a guy that if he doesn't do it too much to where it's a fault, I think it could be a very strong weapon to him. I agree with what you said. George Kittle often injured. Deebo Samuel, what's the whole situation look like there? It sounds like he's going to report to OTAs, or maybe he did. His name was out there just a couple of days ago. But if he's on the field, that's huge for Trey Lance as well as George Kittle. And then, like you said, Brandon Ayuk, we've got to see more out of Brandon Ayuk. He's got to either become more consistent, take a step forward, or find a different role that, Trey Lance is going to need somebody to step up in that offense as a third option, especially with the fact that George Kittle seems to miss a decent amount of time at this point in his career. But I do have Trey Lance up higher than you do, and simply put, just because of his running ability.
Absolutely. And I have Russ at number 9, so I've already hit on my number 9. Let's just I'm gonna roll into number 8. You just alluded to his name, Lamar Jackson, and the reason he is at 8, he will always hang you up fantasy points with his legs. But he's lower because B, he really has no proven wideouts outside of Mark Andrews. And as much as I love Bateman, and I talked about Bateman earlier, he's still not completely proven. He's still a guy that I would invest in, but we're not going to talk about that again. But Lamar Jackson, he just hasn't shown the outstandingness to be a passing quarterback. So, I understand, what was it, in 12 games last year, he threw for 2,882 yards. It's really not a whole lot to hang your hat on. He also finished as the QB 15. Now, mind you, he did play 12 games. He finished as 10 in 15 games in 2020, so he missed one game, which I believe it was the last game of the season he sat out. I could be wrong. But he threw for 2,757 yards. He still only finished as the QB 10. Now, in 2019, the reason he finished so high, 1,206 rushing yards. He's going to get you the rushing yards, but the way the NFL is coming is they will focus in on that, and he's going to have to prove to the NFL that he can pass the ball. So I just don't know how much longer that, and he's also in conversations with for contract year this year, so we don't really know what's going to go on there. He's got 4 years of experience, so he's going into his 5th year, I believe. So I mean, what's to say he's even the starting quarterback in Baltimore after this year? He's up there as 8 because he's going to hang the points with his legs. We have got to see this with his arm before I can move him up any higher.
Yeah, my number 8 quarterback is similar in ability in my mind. Not as good at running the ball, but I think equally as bad at passing the ball. Maybe a little bit better. I have Jalen Hurts at 8. And just like I talked about on last week's episode, the reason I don't have Jalen Hurts probably as high as a lot of other people do is because I do worry that his shelf life may be short in Philadelphia. You know, I'm a Philadelphia 76ers fan for basketball, and I know this is not a basketball podcast at all, but the Philadelphia fan base has been known to chase players away that don't produce wins. They don't care about fantasy stats in Philadelphia, and the coaches that are trying to win games and keep their jobs don't care about fantasy stats. And that is a division that, in my mind, the NFC East is a division that has been wide open the last 2 years. And if Jalen Hurts can't figure it out this year, like we talked about in last week's episode, there was a big to-do about that front office being split on whether or not Jalen Hurts was the answer, if Carson Wentz was the answer. And I have to imagine that the leash is going to be really short when it's a divided room like that. And you do have a really strong quarterback class coming out this year. If Philadelphia doesn't, win the division or misses playoffs even, I wonder if Jalen Hurts is a guy that could be benched in favor or drafted a rookie to push him. And I know these aren't typically things you worry about when you talk about fantasy, but when you talk about dynasty, these things have to carry weight, right? They have to carry a little bit of weight. Just like prior to the draft, a guy you talked about, again, not to get too far off subject here, Austin Eckler, you brought him up as a sell last week on last week's Dynasty Distractions episode because they added another young back and he's not getting any younger himself. But prior to the draft, that was a guy that a lot of people would have probably taken in their top 5 running backs in a Dynasty startup still. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the draft can change things. And, I mean, it's the NFL, it's cutthroat. We've seen in the past where guys have, played really well and lost their starting job because of an injury, or they've put up good fantasy numbers and then the team decides to change, their direction. I mean, look at Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston was a fantasy relevant quarterback when he was in Tampa Bay. And old man Tom Brady came knocking on Tampa Bay's door and they didn't hesitate because it was about winning football games. And I know there's no Tom Brady coming to Philadelphia, but it is something to be considered of at the very least.
Absolutely. Well, you brought up Jalen Hurts, and for the same reason, the only reason I have him higher than Lamar Jackson is his weapons are better. They've got Dallas Goedert, who is not better than Mark Andrews. I'm not saying that. But they have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, Kenneth Gainwell, and Miles Sanders, who I think that whole core right there is better than J.K. Dobbins, Rashard Bateman, and whoever else the Ravens trot out there as wide receiver. I think. Did
you say A.J. Brown? I missed it.
I did say A.J. Brown. I said okay. A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Okay. His weapons are the only reason. And if you honestly were to look at my 7 and 8, it's maybe 15, 20, maybe 30 points separate these two guys. Maybe if you looked at my projections, that's probably roughly all that would split. So you're talking 17 weeks. You're talking 2 points a game is what the separation between my 7 and 8 with Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. The only reason I have Hurts a little higher is his weapons are there. If he proves it, he has everything there to succeed. So I just like him just a little bit better than Lamar Jackson in a dynasty startup.
And I see at my number 7 is Lamar Jackson. So you and I are just a little bit different there. And the reason I put Lamar Jackson ahead is, Lamar Jackson's been the MVP of the National Football League before. I know those numbers were ungodly on the ground, but that is something he could replicate this season. I'm not saying he will. I'm not saying Baltimore will push him to do that, but he is capable of going out and putting up more rushing yards than a lot of your 3-down backs in the NFL could do. So I've got Lamar Jackson just higher because of the history at the position.
So in his MVP year, 2019, He threw for Lamar Jackson threw for 3,127 yards, and he rushed for 1,206. Last year, Jalen Hurts threw for just a few more yards, 3,144, but rushed for about 500 yards less at 784. So I guess he passes a little bit better, but he rushes just a little bit lower.
Sure.
So,
but it also goes back to just like you said, the weapons are a lot better in Philadelphia, and I would argue I'm not a huge Hollywood Brown truther. I know a lot of people are very excited about Hollywood Brown. I was never huge on him, and maybe a lot of that had to do with Lamar Jackson being his quarterback because he doesn't typically put up fantasy relevant options. But Jalen Hurts this year will have better weapons than Lamar Jackson's ever had, with the exception of Mark Andrews. But A.J. Brown cancels that out in my mind.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, who do you got at 6, man?
At 6, I got Dak Prescott. The man just throws the ball, and he just hangs numbers. That's all I could say about him. That offense is centered around him throwing that football. And that's really all you need. Dak Prescott, I know he came back from that devastating injury, and that was, 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2020, and he came back out, finished as the QB8 with 4,449 yards and 37 touchdowns. And then the year before, he threw for 4,902 yards and 30 touchdowns, and he doesn't throw many interceptions. 16 games last year, he threw 2 interceptions. 2019, he threw for 11. 2018, he threw for 8. He doesn't turn the ball over very much, and he just throws that football. That offense wants him to throw. He threw, this is a kind of funny, 2019, 2021, he played 16 games. He threw for the exact same amount of attempts, 596 attempts both years. He rushes the ball when he needs to. He's not one of those guys that's going to tuck it and run on design rushing plays, but he's definitely a guy that he's going to get you some rushing yards, and he's going to throw the football. That's what that offense wants to do, and I absolutely love Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. But last year, I believe you and I both had Dak Prescott in our top 4. And I think the only reason I don't have him higher this year is just because of the loss of Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup being out for the first several weeks. I think Michael Gallup's slated to return mid-October right now.
If everything goes right, yes.
If everything goes right, sure. And you've got CeeDee Lamb, and then I think Cedric Wilson left this offseason too.
Yeah, and then they added Tolbert, and they still have Zeke and Pollard, and then Schultz and
yes, and Dalton Schultz emerged huge last year, and Jalen Tolbert I think will be a fine addition as long as he's able to hit the ground running. Coming from a little bit smaller school, it may take him some time to get used to it. But I think Dak Prescott is a quarterback in an offense that is very quarterback friendly, and if the weapons figure it out, if CeeDee Lamb takes that step and establishes himself as a clear-cut number 1 wide receiver, which I think he's going to have every opportunity to do this year, if Michael Gallup's able to get back on track without missing too much of the season, and Dalton Schultz starts the season and plays all year the way he finished last year, you're talking about Dak Prescott having a chance to be a top 3 quarterback.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, where do you have Dak at?
I have him at 6 as well,
okay.
And I think we're getting ready to get into where you and I are backwards on the next 2. But at 5, I have Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
And I have Kyler Murray at 5. And for me, it's really quite simple as to why he's at 5. The track record is there. Again, another super, super mobile quarterback, but he's also got a very talented arm. But missing 6 weeks of your best wide receiver and your best weapon is going to put a damper on your numbers. Zach Ertz is not getting any younger. I know they added Trey McBride, but typically, with the exception of your Pat Freiermuths and your Kyle Pitts, it takes tight ends a little while to latch on. And I know they added Hollywood Brown and they re-signed A.J. Green, but they also did lose Christian Kirk, and A.J. Green was pretty much a non-factor last year. So I look for Hollywood Brown to fill in that Christian Kirk role and probably be a little better at it than Christian Kirk was. But again, missing DeAndre Hopkins for 6 weeks, I think is going to slow him down a little bit. I think at the first 6 weeks of the season, the numbers will be a little slower. And then maybe even the next 2 weeks as DeAndre Hopkins gets back into the swing of things. But I think Kyler Murray's still talented enough and has enough rushing upside that he will be, have a strong chance to be, at worst quarterback 5, if not knocking into the top 3.
Okay. Who do you have, before I jump into my 5 and 4, because I believe they're the same, who do you have at 4?
I have Joe Burrow at 4.
Okay. Yeah, so we're the same. I got Burrow at 5, and I got Murray at 4. And really the only difference is you hit perfectly on Kyler Murray. The only difference that I have between Burrow and Murray is the rushing. I think that rushing upside for Murray is just a tad bit higher than you're actually going to see from Burrow. Burrow's the same as Dak Prescott. He's going to pull it down. He's going to run if he needs to. Burrow's getting one of the best offensive lines that obviously he's probably ever had. He's only been in the league for 2 years. And, I mean, honestly, his first year he missed everything. So he's going to get the best offensive line he's ever had this year. He's got amazing weapons. So he is in for a phenomenal season this year. If he can't do it this year, then I don't understand what the difference is, because they did everything to help him this year. But the only difference that I really have between Burrow and Murray is Murray's rushing upside. He does have designed run plays. He steals a lot of red zone carries. He gets those rushing touchdowns. And this is another 4 and 5 is the same as my 7 and 8. It's separated by very, very minimal points between these two guys. Burrow has all the weapons in the world to hang up fantasy points through his arm with his arm, and Murray has all the options in the world to hang it up with his feet and his legs. And he also, like you said, he has very good arm talent. So both these guys, you can't really go wrong if you have Burrow at 4 or Burrow at 5 and vice versa. You can't go wrong with either one of these guys. These guys are going to be very, very consistent and very helpful to your fantasy teams.
The one thing I'll say about Burrow, who is at 4 for me, is that he may arguably have the best pass catchers, pass catching group in the National Football League. There's one guy I could potentially make an argument for, and I think we're both on the same page. You're going to talk about him very next. But if Hayden Hurst steps onto the scene this year in Cincinnati and plays to his ability, which we saw the first year of him being in Atlanta, like 3/4 of the way through the season, he was a top 5 tight end with Matt Ryan. And Joe Burrow is at a point now in his career where he's better than Matt Ryan was. I think that was 2019 or 2020. It was 2020. He's at a better point in his career than Matt Ryan was at 2020. So if Hayden Hurst comes onto the scene, gets things figured out real quick, learns that playbook real quick, and does what he did in 2020 with Matt Ryan, it'd be really hard to say that there's a better group of pass catchers anywhere in the National Football League.
Absolutely. So we're going to get into our top 3, but we're going to do it a little different because I'm pretty sure we have 1, 2, and 3 exactly the same. And neither one of these guys, I'm going to say neither one of these top 3 quarterbacks you could go wrong with in any order. I think the only argument I'd have is my number 1 is look at his rushing touchdowns. That's what he does for you. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bo, but number 1, you got Josh Allen. Number 2, we both have Patrick Mahomes. Number 3, we have Justin Herbert.
Correct.
And the only reason that Patrick Mahomes is sliding, because he's been the number 1 consensus for 2-3 years now. He loses Tyreek Hill. He loses that extreme field stretcher that he had. If he gets that in McCole Hardman or Sky Moore or who's the other one there?
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
If Valdez-Scantling can figure out how not to drop the long ball and can figure that out, I think Patrick Mahomes could easily be the number 1 QB again. While he's losing his best weapon, Josh Allen has found his rhythm with his best weapon. He's finding a rhythm with emerging younger tight end and Dawson Knox. They added the 29-year-old Jamison Crowder, who's going to fill that slot wide receiver role where Cole Beasley was, and so they're getting younger-ish. And what really brings Allen up for me is they added the pass catching ability with James Cook during the draft, and Josh Allen is just a guy that he's consistently going to be in the top three of quarterbacks week in and week out, probably for multiple years to come. Because if he finds it hard to run, he can do it with his arm. If he's struggling to throw, he can do it with his legs. There's nothing holding this quarterback, nothing holding Josh Allen back from the sky here.
One thing I'll add to that too that I don't think you intentionally missed is the emergence of Gabriel Davis in the playoffs last year. If Gabriel Davis can play at a similar level, I mean, what he did in the playoffs was astounding.
Absolutely.
So he doesn't have to be the 4 touchdown game guy, but if he can just be a reliable number 2 opposite of Stephon Diggs, my goodness, you could see Josh Allen put up fantasy numbers that may have never been seen before.
Yeah, and he also added what's his name? That rookie that they just added, Shakur.
Yeah, out of Boise State.
Yeah, he's a field stretcher who's got the speed and everything else to be. I'm not going to say he's going to be Tyreek Hill, but this guy right here has the ability to emerge as a deep threat option. So he finally has, because we bring up Josh Allen, he's got what could possibly be the best possession wide receiver in the NFL in Stephon Diggs. He's got a potential top 5 tight end in Dawson Knox, and now he may have a field stretcher in Shakur. So he may have all the weapons he ever could ask for.
Absolutely.
Patrick Mahomes, we already talked about, he's Patrick Mahomes. He's going to get it done, and he's going to get it done fancy and flashy, and he's always fun to watch. Let's talk about our number 3. Let's talk about Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert is the one name that I was going to say that you might be able to make an argument for his pass catchers to be equal to that of Joe Burrow. He's got the old trusty guy who's going to catch everything thrown his way in Keenan Allen. He's got the deep ball threat in Mike Williams. He's got another deep ball threat in Jalen Guyton. Joshua Palmer kind of broke onto the scene a little bit last year. Could be a heck of a slot guy. The tight end is a complete up for grabs thing in Los Angeles, which is why I say if Hayden Hurst emerges, it puts him well above, or it puts Joe Burrow's weapons well above Herbert's. But I think Austin Eckler is, in my mind, still the best pass catching back in the NFL. The only one you could make an argument for is Alvin Kamara. But that is such a big asset to a quarterback to have a fantasy perspective, to have a guy that you can dump the ball off to an Austin Eckler-esque player that's you're gonna throw the ball to them behind the line of scrimmage and they may bust it off for a 70-yard touchdown. I mean, that definitely helps inflate fantasy numbers from the quarterback position. Justin Herbert, the only reason I've got him below Patrick Mahomes and below Josh Allen is just simply because those other two have done it a little bit longer than Justin Herbert has. It would not shock me to see Justin Herbert finish as the quarterback 1 this year. It wouldn't surprise me for any of the top 3 that we've just mentioned to finish as the number 1. But based on history and, the tale of the tapes, if you will, I've got Herbert at 3 right now just because – he's going into his 3rd season, and if he does what he's done the last 2 years, you could very well see next year on, Dynasty startup rankings him being the clear-cut number 1.
Absolutely. So you talked about the tight end there in Los Angeles with Herbert, and they signed a guy who a couple years ago we talked about a lot of people were talking about how he could be the emergence of a top 5 tight end, top 10 tight end, and Gerald Everett. They did sign him, but what we saw from Everett after all that chit chat and all that talk and all those whispers is he's more of a blocking tight end. So Herbert's tight end, you talked about Josh Allen's I talked about Josh Allen's with Dawson Knox, and we all know Travis Kelce with Patrick Mahomes. The only issue I have with keeping Herbert lower than those two is, once again, those two have done it longer. Herbert he literally has a question at wide receiver 3 and tight end. And you're looking at Gerald Everett, Darnold Palmer, and Trey McKitty are his 3 tight ends. And so, that's really the only knock on Justin Herbert.
Sure.
Sure. And he also, I could be wrong. I don't, do I? Herbert doesn't run it as much as the other two do. That I could.
He's capable. I mean, it's not the most
Oh,
flashy thing.
He did take off 63 times last year, so.
He's capable. It's not the most flashy thing, but he can do it. It's similar to Dak Prescott in my mind. He can do it to pick up those, third and threes, or if the pocket collapses, he's mobile and young enough to get out of harm's way and scamper with those feet to pick up the first. But yeah, he's not known typically as a runner.
Yeah, he took off the same amount as Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes took off 66 times, so roughly.
Well,
about
you got to remember
same.
Patrick Mahomes used to run a little bit more until he got hurt 2 years ago, and that kind of put the clamps on that.
Yeah. Well, not really. He's taken off 60 in 2018, 62 in 2020, and 66 in 2021. So he's actually gone up after his injury in 2019.
Well, but it's not designed runs.
Right, absolutely.
Let's talk about some quick guys that we left out, and we don't need to go into a ton of detail as to why they got left out, because a lot of it's just going to be simply due to age, and those are guys like Tom Brady, who is probably going to be a top 12 finishing quarterback this year, but because of his age, there's much better options in a dynasty startup, similar to Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins. There's a handful of guys in that fit that mold.
Matthew Stafford's another name also.
Exactly. Yes.
Now let's talk about I want to talk about these two names right quick before we sign off for the day. I know it's getting late for us. These two guys were left off of my top 12 with are Zach Wilson and Justin Fields. The main reason Justin Fields is left off, he's in Chicago and they did nothing to help him. Nothing at all. They didn't add any weapons. They let his best weapon really go in Allen Robinson. They're just not doing anything to help Justin Fields, and that is why I cannot vouch to move him into my top 12. I cannot have him as my QB1 when they did nothing for him. The guy he's going to have to do what Lamar Jackson does intentionally, and he's just going to have to run for his life. He's going to be a Russell Wilson type where 2 seconds after the ball is snapped, he's running. And
yeah.
I don't think he's going to be able to make plays with the weapons that he has. He's not going to be able to make those type of plays.
Yeah, I mean, Darnell Mooney's serviceable and has been very, very good. And then Cole Kmet, I do look for Cole Kmet to take a further step this year. But outside of that, you're right. It's very bleak. And because of the lack of options on offensive line, he's also out for me.
Yep, absolutely. And then Zach Wilson, there's 2 reasons he's out for me. A, he's a Jet, and we don't really know what the Jets are going to do. And B, I want to see him prove it with everything that he does have around him. He's got Corey Davis. He added 3 tight ends in Ruckert.
C.J.
Uzma, and he added another tight end too.
Is it Jacob Hollister there?
Yeah, I think Hollister is there. And then he also added Garrett Wilson. No, not Garrett Wilson. In the draft this year.
Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, it is Garrett. Okay. Apparently it's getting a little too late for me right now. I'm blanking completely on names. But I want to see what he can do.
He's also got Elijah Moore, Michael Carter, and now a very strong running game in Breece Hall. So he's another one that could be there, but like you say, I want to see him prove it. There's one more I'd like to add, Brant, from that class, and I know you just listed him last week in your Dynasty Distractions, and that's Mac Jones. Again, Mac Jones is of that age. He's with probably the best coach in NFL history, in Bill Belichick, but the weapons just really, got great tight ends in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. He's got great pass-catching backs in James White, and I think Pierre Strong's going to be very serviceable in that department. And then the wide receivers, they added Devontae Parker via trade this year, and Devontae Parker's a guy that if he stays healthy, he could be fantastic, I guess. But then it's non-existent. And so very similarly to Justin Fields, Mac Jones is off based on his weapons. And the one thing that Justin Fields has that Mac Jones doesn't is decent mobility.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that's going to do it for our rankings, guys. We're going to buckle down and do our running backs. We're going to do top 24 running backs possibly next week. We're really hoping that this Dynasty draft that we're in wraps up and we can talk about that next week. But yeah, we're going to buckle down on some rankings. Guys, get at us in the comments. Talk to us. Let us know what you guys think of our rankings. Let us know if you think about somebody we missed. We'll be more than happy to talk it up with you, or message back and forth, or in the comments, or even talk about it on air, on our cast. Get at us, guys. It's always a pleasure to interact with our audience. And it's getting closer and closer to draft season and dynasty startup season. I know a lot of rookie drafts are done. So definitely, if you got any questions, reach out to us. We're on the Fantasy Holics page. We're also on the Fatboyz Dynasty page on Facebook. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. And as always, guys, good luck in your draft. Yeah, go ahead.
Hang on just 1 minute. We've been back into this podcast and business for a little while again, after taking a little bit of a hiatus from our past experiences, the Fatboyz Dynasty or Fatboyz Fantasy podcast, and it just doesn't feel right to me not ending the episode with the signature catchphrase. It's got to come back, and it's got to start this week. As always, stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.